Okay. All right. So we went over our agenda. Let's go ahead and toggle back over to our PDS program. Here's our church office program, and it should look very familiar to all of you. This is just the screen that you see when you first log in. Now, I am using sample data, so it's not any data that you would recognize, but I did set up certain things, like when we get into the parish share fund, and that's going to look very similar to what you are managing on the parish side. Well, let's go ahead and just jump in to our program. Now, real quick, I'm hearing some feedback. Let me just go ahead and make sure that everybody's microphone is turned off. Bear with me. Okay, looks like everybody is muted. All right. All right, so the first thing that we want to talk about on our agenda is common features to all PDS programs. Now, this is going to be true if you're using Church Office, Information Office, or any of the other programs that PDS offers. Now, where that comes into play is at the very top of your screen. Notice up on top how we have some buttons. They're very small. In my case, unfortunately, I cannot make those any larger. But as I hover over them, it's going to tell me what they do. You have undo buttons. So when you're typing information in, you can undo it, and it will undo the last change that you made to your data. You have cut, copy, and paste commands. Okay, those are very similar to any other program or word editor program that you use. You can use those commands as well. And you can also use control keyboard commands like Control C, Control V, Control X. Those work as well in all PDS programs. We have a spell check. So if you're typing in, let's say you're using one of our comment boxes and you're typing in a message, you can use spell check against that to get your, make sure that you are not spelling anything incorrectly. That's going to help you out along the way. The print screen tool is going to allow you to take a screen capture and print that to your printer of any document or any screen that you want to be able to preserve. That's also very helpful when you're learning the program for the first time and you want to take screen captures. We have a calculator tool. I'm going to go ahead and click on that just to show you. It's a basic calculator tool. Now, where this becomes helpful is maybe you are doing a quick posting process and you're entering a dollar amount. You are adding up figures. You can use the calculator tool on that dollar amount field. It's going to look just like a little calculator. It'll bring this up, do your calculation, and you can apply that to the field that you're on. Okay? So that's going to be helpful for you as well. I'm going to hit cancel, and let's just keep moving over. The next one over is the calendar view. So all PDS programs have a year-at-a-glance view of the calendar. So very easily up at the top, if you need to see your calendar, you don't have one on your desktop, just go ahead and click on that, and your calendar is there. This is just a view-only tool, and you can also tell it that you want to include weekends or not. I'm going to go ahead and close and come back over to our screen. Now, the My Settings button, I do want to talk about this a little bit more in depth because this is where you can control as a user. So when you log into PDS, you probably, or you should be putting in a username and a password. Now that username and password is going to store your preferences. Like when I go into the program, what color do I want the program screen to be? See, mine's powder blue, but I can easily change that to any color that I want. Let's go ahead and just choose pumpkin here, save that, and you can see that that changes the entire program view, okay? I'm going to set that back to powder blue. Now, you can also put some effects in the program. Now, there are some things that do not apply when you are using your program in on demand. So you want to just kind of be aware of things like sound. Like you may or may not be able to hear a sound. I'm going to hit the default beep. Now, anytime a message pops up in PDS, I could hear that type of messaging. Okay. Um, I don't believe that it works in on demand, so you might test that out to see if that's true or not. But that's just an audio cue. If you're doing a lot of data entry and the program's saying, "Hold on, you need to address this question that's appearing on screen as a pop-up message." It's an audio cue for you to look up at your screen and address what's going on. Then you have the ability to control sizes. Now, the easiest thing for you to do to adjust your screen size is, I'm going to hit cancel here real quick and hit close, is to click that minimize or maximize button or your restore button in the middle. Now, when I click on restore, it's going to bring my screen to the smallest view in that's viewable on my screen. Now I can drag any corner. Let's go ahead and just take the bottom right corner. See how those arrows appear? And I can drag that and I can resize my screen to whatever size works best for me. Okay. So I can make those adjustments as well. I like to do it that way, but you can also do it from your My Settings view as well. Looks like folks are joining in late. Let me just go ahead and add them in. All right, so that was the My Settings view. Let's go back here. Now, on your home screen, you can also make some additional selections on what your screen can look like. Okay, you can put a picture, you can change the program name. Again, this is only affecting you as a user. Now, the last tab is important. We introduced what's called the overview screens in all PDS programs. Now, the overview screen is very helpful in that it will tell you pretty much everything, every important piece about a family, about on the family overview, or the member on the member overview. And you can also see that we have fund screen overviews, personnel screen overviews. Now, if you prefer to see the primary personal view of that record first, and then still have an opportunity to go back and look at the overview, then you can set these just like we have here on my screen. I'm going to click on Mark All, and I'm just basically telling the program when I log in, when I navigate to my family screen, always show the primary view first. Same with member and same with the rest of those screens. I'm going to click Save OK, and I'm going to click Close. Okay. Now, where that becomes important is if I go to Information and I go to my family view, um, got some folks that are joining in. Let me just take care of that real quick. Okay, so back over to my program. Bear with me here. My information view is taking a moment to react. Sorry about that. We still have some folks joining in as well, so let me go ahead and let that person in. Yeah, okay, so I'm getting some type of slowness here on my end. I'm not quite sure why I'm seeing that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close my program here and restart it here real quick. This might be a good opportunity to just kind of point out that if you run into any issues in PDS, let us know about it. We have a great support team that's there to help you out with any questions that you might have. So let me go ahead and log back in here. All right. Now, right before our session here, I went ahead and did update the program. I'm wondering if that might have been related. But let me go back to our family view. This is where I was about to go to. Now, notice that the primary information screen is what appears. That's because of that setting that I made up earlier. Now, if I want to get to that overview screen, I can get to it by just clicking on the family overview here. And as you can see here, it does actually provide quite a bit of information about the family all in one easy to see view. Um, Now, if I wanted to be able to just jump to certain areas like their current funds, or if I wanted to see the totals for all the funds, I can click on the show totals over on the left-hand side. Notice how each one of these, when I hover over them, those are links. That just simply means that if I click on that, it's going to take me directly to the screen that stores that data. Okay. Down here, remarks. I'm going to go ahead and click on address remarks here. You'll see it takes me directly to the primary screen, and there's my remarks information. Okay. So if you need to get to any area from the overview screen, just make sure that you remember that those are all linked. Okay. You can also print out information from this screen. I'm going to go ahead and click on print. Let's go ahead and just print and just take a look at the preview. Okay, so my printer output is full, so it's not going to show that to me right now. But let me just go also show you that you have your settings icon on your overview screens. And you can also control what information displays on these screens. Okay. So not only can you also control if it's what screen appears when you get to this screen, like we did on our prior settings screens, we can also say we want to show the name formats, and the name formats will appear. How about family keywords? And the family keywords will appear. Okay. Email. So the more I put here, the more information is going to display on my screen. Okay. I'm just going to go ahead and mark them all and see how you can see all that information. But if this is too much, just go ahead and uncheck the items that you don't want to see, and it'll display that. Again, that's on a user by user basis. All right, so let's go ahead and get back over to our home screen. And I'm going to click on the home icon up on top to get there. Now, just to the left of the home screen is the Who is Running button. Now, if you share your PDS program, and this could be church office with multiple people in your office, or this could also be church office information office data being shared at the same time. Now, this is going to tell you who's launched church information, where they're at in the program. So you'll be able to see who it is, well, this is going to be their on-demand computer that's going to display, but it'll also tell you what program they're logged in as. Now, this becomes helpful, especially when you are about to run a process. Let's say I'm about to run a process where I'm posting a bunch of keywords to families. I might want to make a backup of the data before I start that process. Now, it might be in the middle of the day, and I go to this screen, and it says, I'm on, but there's also 3 or 4 other folks that are in the program. So what you can do is you can click on Notify Users, and there's 2 options. The first option up on top that I just selected will just send them a friendly message that you need them to exit out of the program, and so that you can do what you need to do. Okay. You can type in whatever message you want here. You can say, please exit out of PDS for the next 10 minutes. Okay. And then as soon as you hit that send notification, that's going to appear on everybody's screen. It's going to pop up with your message. Now, they still have to manually stop what they're doing, stop whatever process they're doing, and then exit out of PDS. So hopefully they will do that. But if you send this message and 10 minutes later there's still folks in, you can choose this second option. You can also control the time on when it will automatically shut down folks. Now, this can be very helpful during lunchtime when you're trying to do work and folks are out to lunch, or after hours, you're trying to do work and you need to make a backup, or you need to have exclusive rights of the program, and folks forgot to log out for the day. You can use this bottom option You can change it from 2 minutes to 5 minutes if you feel more comfortable with that. You can drop it to 1 minute. But then after that time, it will shut everybody down out of PDS, of church and formation, if that's also being shared, and leave you in so that you're the only one in. Okay. Now down below, you're also going to see this messaging that says automatically log out at midnight. It's important that you do not uncheck that box. Okay. We have that box, that setting in place to help us when we update your programs, that the program automatically shuts out at midnight so that the next morning, the process of launching the program update will happen without any issues. So leave that box checked by all means. All right, I'm going to just click on, just choose that first option here and just close out. Okay, we're not going to kick anybody out because I'm the only one in. Now, after you do either of those, choose either of those options, come back over to your list of users and then just check to see if you're in. And what you'll start to see is just folks drop off so that you're the only one in. Once you're the only one in, you can close this box and continue with your work. Okay, so a very helpful tool. Moving on over to the right side, the last thing I want to talk about here is the favorites button. Now, if I click on favorites, you can see I don't have anything added right now. But if I want to add a favorite, what the idea behind favorites is if there's certain processes or screens that I go to on a regular basis in PDS, I can create a favorite for that. And that's really just a shortcut. So let's say that I normally start my day by going to the family screen and working in, and I like to see the listing screen for my families, okay? So on this view, I can come over here to my favorites, click on favorites and add favorite, and that's going to create a shortcut to the family listing screen. When I click close, let's say it's the beginning of my day, I can just click on favorites listing and it's going to take me directly to my listing screen. Okay, and that works for any screen in PDS, any programs. So that can be also a time saver for you as well. The other piece on this list that I haven't spoken about yet is this quick navigation tool. Now, this is fairly new in PDS. I'm going to go ahead and click on Quick Nav, and as you can see, it breaks out all of our different program screens into tabs. So we have tabs that store data and information. Those are our information screens. Utilities, processes, quick postings, keywords, and setup. Now, just like our overview screens, if you hover over any of these are links. So if you want to just be able to get to a specific area and maybe you don't know where to get to it, you can open up this quick navigator. It'll display these for you and you might see what you're trying to get to on this screen. If you do, just go ahead and click on it. Let's say I want to get to my member reports. I'm going to go ahead and click on that now, and I'm now in member reports. Okay. I'm going to go back to the home screen. Let's say I'm not quite sure where it is, but I have an idea of where what it's named. Okay. So maybe that area is, well, we're going to talk about this later, is registration. Okay. So you can see here, if I type in the word register, it's going to find, well, it found register. So let's go ahead and do registration and hit find. See if it finds anything. Okay. So it didn't find anything. So how about online? Okay. Now, if I go to my processes tab, okay, so it found it. Now, I did say this was a fairly new feature, so I'm going to just ask the programmers about this. It found it, but it didn't display the tab and prop it up for me. So that might be something we need to look at. But it found online registration. When I click on it, it's going to take me to that process for registering folks online. Now, don't worry, we're going to talk about this later in the session today. Just wanted to show you an example of how to use that quick navigation button up on top. All right, so let's go ahead and just go back to our home screen. And I'm going to say yes, because that's actually a process that we would have gone through. And now I'm sitting back on my home screen. Okay, so let's just toggle back over to our agenda items. All right, so those were the main common features available to all PDS programs up on top. Become familiar with those, and hopefully you'll find some time savers in there. The next piece that I want to talk about is backing up your data to the cloud. Okay. Now, I did mention processes, and as a matter of fact, that registering families online is a process. So you'll always want to consider backing up your data, especially when the program prompts you to back up your data. Now, every PDS program, there is a default of backing up the data at least once a week, and typically that's going to be on a Monday. So if you're the first person to go into PDS Church Office or Formation Office for that matter, and the program prompts you to make a backup, actually what'll actually happen is it's going to automatically start making that backup. So what you want to do is just let it run. Don't cancel that process. If you cancel a backup, the program's going to stop the backup. It's going to let you in. But then what's going to happen is the next time somebody launches Church Office later that day, they're going to get a message that says unable to make the backup because somebody else is in, because you're now in earlier with that lock session. So now it can't make a backup. And that's going to just continue to show that messaging throughout the day. Best way to avoid it is to let that backup run. Okay. So the other piece I do want to talk about is backing up the data and making sure that we're pointing to on demand for that backup to happen. So back over to Church Office. Now I'm going to go ahead and just start the manual backup process, but it's going to be, the interface is going to look the same. So if I click on File and I go down to my Backup Restore, I'm going to see backup data as my very first option. Okay, now when I click on it, you're going to see that there's a couple things that it's telling me. It's going to warn me that this will back up all programs sharing the same data file. Okay, so if I back up in Church Office and I'm sharing data with Formation Office, I'm also backing up Formation Office at the same time in that same file. Okay, that's a good thing. We want to back up all of that shared data. It's also going to tell us the last time a backup was made. Now, the backup reason, if we were going to make a backup before online registration, we can go ahead and type in before. Okay, go ahead and put in a more detailed reason why you're backing up. That's helpful for when you are, let's say worst case scenario, something went terribly wrong during a process and you need to restore that data. Let me just kind of pause there and say, let us know if you ever get to that point. Call our support. We'll guide you through if that's the best method to get you back to where you need to be. That is restoring the data or manually making corrections. So talk to our support folks if you ever think that you are at the point where you might need to restore your data. We'll help you through and guide you through that process. So we've got the backup reason in place, and then the next is going to be the backup method. So that's going to dictate where that file, the backup file, lives. Now, what we recommend that you do, you'll see that we have options for backing up to a selected drive. You never want to choose that option because that's going to ask you to direct to an actual drive letter. On Demand has internal backups in the weekly folders, long-term folders, and also specific folders like monthly and quarterly as well. So the idea behind backing up in these, we call them system backup folders, is the program will, let's say you send your backup to the week folder or the weekly folder. So once a week has passed and that backup is a week old, then what it will do, actually, it's going to stay in the weekly folder until it's 30 days old. And then once it's 30 days old, we should see that backup automatically move to the monthly folder for us. And that's PDS's way of maintaining these backup files. If after 3 months, we should see that move to the quarter folder or quarterly folder. And then we have the yearly folders. And then we have this new idea called long-term folders. Now, the long-term folder, if I send my backup here, what I'm simply saying is send it over to this folder and keep it there. Don't move it anywhere else. Don't delete it. That's going to be where we want that backup to be saved. I would recommend that if if you choose something other than weekly folder, the backup folder is going to be your next best option, especially for processes where you're making backups. And that process is only done maybe once a year. Right? Think about like your end of year fund advance process, right? So when you're advancing your other funds, your non-PSP parish share funds, like your weekly donation funds or any other funds you might be tracking in PDS, when you're advancing those funds, you always want to back up your data. As a matter of fact, the program is going to prompt you to make a backup. Send it over to your long-term folder, and you'll always have that backup sitting there. Okay, give it a name, give it a backup, and let it run. You have to be the only one in the program to make that backup. And just go ahead and hit that start backup. I'm going to go ahead and hit start backup so you can see what that looks like. And that's just going to take off. Now, once it's finished, it's just going to take us right back to where we were, and then we can continue whatever process we were running at the time. I think I might have heard some folks join in a little bit late, so let me just do a quick check on that to see if there are folks that are trying to come in. Okay. All right, so hopefully these, maybe you learned something a little bit new over the last few minutes, but if this all looks familiar to you, then that's great. We want you to just use all of these tools and processes that are available to you in PDS. While that's running, I'm also going to check to see if there's any questions that have come in. Kevin saying, are we able to see the size of our database? Well, the program, this backup will actually create, give you some information. It'll give you some stats about your database, like your families, members, and funds. But as far as the size, like the physical size, the backup actually is a compressed version of your entire database, so it's not a true representation of your file size. But this actually is a really good starting point for how large your database is. I'm going to hit close, and let's go back over to our home screen. All right. Does it always sort by envelope ID? Patricia's asking that question. Well, in PDS, what you are doing is under my family view. Let's go ahead and just jump over there real quick. You have your sort orders that we can change it to. So the default, I believe, is ID, but you can choose by name. And what that does is that changes how your next view looks like. Okay. So because we were looking at Van Loon, so it's now in the V's, right? Your listing screen, which is probably what you were referring to, you can also sort that with using these fields up on top. So if I go to the ID number and I click on ID number, I can change how I'm sorting. Okay, so I can sort by ID if it's not already. It looks like it's name right now. So I can say, let's sort by ID number, ascending order. And it's going to rebuild my list. And now we're looking at ID order. Let's go to the top. Now it's giving me a lot of information, a lot of rows per family, but that's because we're bringing in all the members. Just know that we have control over what fields we display. I'm going to jump into the listing screens because I really do think that They are, it's a powerful tool to get data out of the program or to see it on screen and then get it out or export it if you want to without having to go into the reporting tools. But we'll be talking about this a little bit later under the reports when we talk about reports. Okay, let's go back to the home screen if we would. And let's just jump back over to our agenda. All right, so the next thing we want to talk about is adding families and members. Now, I mentioned earlier, adding families and members in PDS, it is a process. You want to always make sure that you are doing what you can to prevent duplicate records from getting introduced into your database. Now, the program also has some safety nets to help prevent the addition of duplicate records in the database, but ultimately it's going to be how you're adding these records in that's going to help prevent that from happening. Now, let's go ahead and just toggle back over to Church Office. And before we do, before we jump into families, I want to go over to our file screen. And under File, I'm going to go to Setup. And under Setup, we have ID number options. Now, Church Office allows you to turn on the auto numbering of ID numbers. Now, I think this is very helpful because that will eliminate your need to manually track what that next ID number is. The program's going to automatically do it for you. Now, while we're here, let's also talk a little bit about that second ID number that is owned by the diocese. Now, right now, you'll see in my screen, I'm choosing to display that second ID. Now, in your screens, on your programs, the best is to, and this should already be turned on, and it should look like this already. Do not allow changes should be checked, and do not display the second ID should be checked, okay? Now, this has already been set by the diocese. And the reason the diocese sets this is because the diocese owns that second ID number. Now, it's not your envelope ID number that you manage for your families. It's a different number that the diocese uses and maintains for the synchronization of that record, your family record, to the diocese, and that happens on a regular basis. That's already been set up by the diocese. And then that number itself, the diocese uses that almost as their numbering system, okay? Like you have your envelope ID, the diocese has their diocesan ID. So what you're seeing here is what your screen should look like. If your screen looks different than this, then what I would recommend is that you can reach out to me. You can reach out to Christy as well. And we just recommend that that this setting is exactly how we see it right here, okay? We want to prevent the accidental changing or deletion of that second ID number that the diocese uses. All right, so that's the top piece. The second piece is how do we want those ID numbers to be assigned in PDS? Well, what we recommend, and this can be different from parish to parish, when I click on automatically assign ID, I can then tell it what number to start with. Now, it's important that the ID numbers are, the starting ID is a range that is outside of what is already being used. I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to put 500 for my example here, and I'm going to click Save, okay? And I'm going to click Close. Now, when I go into my families, this is the ID number that we're talking about, okay? So you'll see in my samples, I have ID numbers assigned to all my families. As a matter of fact, Church Office requires that you have an ID number for every family in the program. Now, to contrast to that, formation office does not require ID numbers. So you might have families in formation that don't have ID numbers, but church office always does have family IDs. All right, so now if I was to add a new family, now I'm going to get that information from multiple sources. I might be looking at a paper registration form. Okay, so that might be in place today at your parish. Families register all the time. They fill out forms and they send, they hand those over. So the first thing that you want to do, looking at that form, is look up to see if that record exists. Okay, so you're going to be doing multiple things, and I call that like an exhaustive search. So the first thing you're going to do is use your search tool up on top. So while on the family screen, click on search, and you're going to see that we can search by a number of different methods. Okay, now the first one is family name. What I would recommend that you do is also checkbox the auto detect feature. Now that's going to detect if you're typing in a name or an ID. So if I happen to be on family name and I start typing in an ID number, I'll show you what that looks like. Look how it automatically switched to ID. So it's like, no, you're typing in a number, so you must be doing an ID search. That's because of this feature here. So again, see how that's chosen with ID. So if I start typing in a name and I do a search, I'm going to go ahead and hit the enter button. Let's see. Family ID. Okay. I was actually on this different field. So let me go ahead and just type that again. So Wilson. There we are. So I have to be on the partial lookup. I'm sorry, the auto detect name in order for that to do that lookup. So auto detect family name, auto detect family ID with this box checked is going to flip-flop, and it's going to do the proper search no matter which one you're on, ID or name. It's going to be able to search by both. Now, so let's say we have a family that's joining in, and their name is, I'm going to come up with just a random name, George Watson. Okay. So let's go ahead and look up George. All right. So I did a search with his last name and it did not come up. Okay. So that tells me they're not in my active live database. Now, there is a feature in PDS where you can archive families. Okay. So that's going to be the part of our search as well when we add this family in. But for George, we didn't find him, so that's a good thing. Now, as far as his phone number, we're also going to do a phone number search, and we're going to do an address search as well. All right, so let's go ahead and look up his address. So we cancel out of this, right? Just click out of that box to get to our next field, and we're going to do a phone number. So that's this one here, family or member phone. Go ahead and just type that in. Now notice though, it doesn't give us an option for a area code. So it's going to cast a wide net looking for this number without the area code. Okay, phone number not found. Okay, so strike two, we haven't found him yet, but that's a good thing. We want to just keep looking. All right, so then the next thing we're going to do is an address search. So here's our address or partial address. So we know that he lives on 4512 West Palm Lane. Okay, I'm going to press enter. Nothing. Now, even though we didn't find it, you might want to consider just typing in the address part, so the number part of the address. Still with that partial address search on, press enter here. Okay, and it's going to look at every address that has 4512 on it. So let's just go ahead and show you an example of what that could look like. So here's Wilson here. He's at 449 West Sunrise. If I look up 2449 and do a search, see, we found Wilson. Okay. But if anybody else had 2449, maybe 2449 West Post Road, 2449, kind of get the idea. It's going to also show those records here as well. Okay. So we're just kind of going down the list looking for name, address, phone number. You can also do email searches. Let's just go back to our search box. We've got our email. Let's go look at both member and family. You can do a search with area code 2, right, for that phone number. And you can also look for other things like partial names. So let's jump back up to our name field. So we'll just choose WAT, right? Let's just see if it finds anything with WAT. All right, it did. So it found Waterhouse. It found rainwater. So you can also do that partial search on those names. Okay. Again, an exhaustive search trying to find those records. Okay. You shouldn't have to go that far, but I wanted to show you some of the different areas that you might choose to look those records up. All right, so we haven't found him so far. So it looks like he's a new family. So we've gone through our exhaustive search. Let's go ahead and add him in as a new family. So the next step is going to be add family. Okay, now we happen to be on Bronson Wilson, but that's okay. We can click add family from here. We can click add family from any of these member screens. Let's say I'm on relationships. I can click add family. Okay, as long as my family button is pressed, I can add a family. I can also delete a family, but we'll talk a little bit about that later. I'm going to click add family. And now I'm being asked, do I want to add a new family or do I want to add an archive family? So you're always going to want to choose archived first before you choose to add. The reason we choose archive is we want to go in and check to see if any families that have been deleted from your database, but you made the choice to, instead of removing that family from the actual database itself, you chose to archive the family and all of its members and all of its funds. So what that becomes helpful is if that family ever comes back to your parish, you can find them in the archive and bring them right back and then just simply update their information. So I'm going to click on add. It's going to bring up a view where I'm going to do a search. Okay, so here's that find this family. Well, I'm going to go look up Watson here. Okay, see how it's in order by name? We can also sort by ID. So we're going to do a search here as well. And if we don't find this family, at this point, we can click add new family and then go into the add new family process. But let's say we were looking for Stephen Wood. Well, here's Stephen Wood right here. Let me just click no. So here's Stephen Wood right here. If we were looking for him and not Watson, the mere fact that we found them in the archive means that all I need to do is just look at the rest of the information. We have a scroll bar here at the bottom. I can scroll to the right. Just make sure this is the right family. Look at the street address, look at the city. Some of this might be old if they've been archived, but it's also going to tell you a lot of information about that record. Are they a formation family? What's their ID numbers? Okay. So if you found enough supporting information about that archive record, that's the correct family, then you can click on use this family. I'm going to go ahead and do that for the Stephen Wood family just so that you can see that process. And then it's going to ask me, do I want to add all the family members? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and choose mark all to bring all those members in as well. Use mark members. And just like that, I brought the Stephen Wood family back in from the archive. Now at this point, if my registration has updated information about them, I just update the street address, contact information, email, anything about that family, I want to make sure that I update, okay? If there's any new members of the family that are now Also on that registration form, I can just simply click on members and then add the members. So very easily I can do that.
Mike, this is Christy. Can I just interrupt and ask a question? For the diocese, they are told to never delete families and to make them inactive. Can you explain the difference between archive and inactive?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Christy. Yes, so it is very rare that we as PDS would recommend that you delete families, because when you delete a family out of the database, then you lose everything about that family, their giving history, sacrament information. It's just gone.
Right.
The safest way to manage that family is to first inactivate the family. So here's Stephen Wood right here. We'll just stay on him for a moment. If I click on inactivate, okay, the program's going to say, do I want to mark the family and all of its members as inactive? If I say yes, then I've now, and here's another thing about the a note saying that they're not going to now print on reports unless I specifically say, and click OK. And then I can also set the parish left. So if they've simply moved away and you just inactivate them, then you can also set the date that they left the parish. I'm going to go ahead and say that they left today, and it's going to update left parish for today's date. That's a good thing. Now you can update that if maybe it was a couple weeks ago and you're now just getting to it. You can always manually edit that, but go ahead and choose to put in the date. And then I'm going to inactivate all the ministries and participation of the membership of that family. So now the family is inactive. I can still see them in my database. And there's a couple things I can do to not always see them by choosing this filter up on top. So right now, I could see my inactives because my filter is set to both. If I choose just show active, then Stephen Wood disappears. They're still in my database. I've just filtered them out, so I'm not constantly seeing those inactive records. But if I click both again, and I do my search for Watson, click the wrong button. Let's go back to families, and let's go back to Watson. Actually, it was Wood. I'm sorry. So Stephen Wood, here he is again. So here's our inactive record. Now, inactive allows us to continue to see the family, filter the family if we don't want to see them on a regular basis, but they're still in our database. They're just simply inactive. Now, if I choose to archive the family, right? So now let's say a couple months down the road, the family has, they've moved away. We don't need to work with them anymore. They moved out of the diocese. They moved out of state. They didn't give any recent contributions, so we're not going to be producing any end-of-year letters for them. Then you can then choose the option to delete the family. Now, when I click delete, the program's going to prompt me. This will delete the family and all the information about this family. Okay. Are you sure? Okay. Now, when I say yes, it's going to prompt with a second message about the deletion. Okay. Why am I deleting the record? So they moved, and I can also put more information about why.
So the policy in Pittsburgh is that they are not permitted to use that delete. You are not to delete any families. So the archive only would work if you go through that process there to delete, correct?
Right. Yeah. So the archive process will keep that record without deleting it from the database.
Yeah. So for Pittsburgh, I would say we do not archive or delete. That's the bishop's policy. So we'll make them inactive.
Okay. All right. So yeah. So in that case, always want to just simply inactivate like I chose earlier, and then you're done. At that point, the record is you've managed that record up to the point where it's inactive, and you've inactivated all the membership of the individual. So any active ministries or talents, or in the formation program, any sessions that that individual might have been in or teaching also becomes inactive as well. And then there's a visual cue. The family turns red in that case when that family's made inactive.
Perfect.
I would recommend that you just go ahead and set that filter to active. That way you're not having to run into those families when you're doing searches and other things. And like the program prompted, it said that if when I make a family inactive, they're not going to automatically appear on our reports unless we do something additional to tell the report that we want to include inactive families. So know that they're not going to appear on reports or listings as well at that point. All right. Now, as far as the adding of new families, now I'm going to talk about this here for the next few minutes, only because we had to start a little bit late, about 3 to 5 minutes late. So hopefully you all can stick around for the next 5 minutes. I'm just going to go through the adding of the family process. And then if needed, we can also pick this up next time as well. So if you do have to drop off, I understand. We are recording this, and you'll have an opportunity to catch that on the recording. All right, so the family needs to be added. So we were talking about George Watson earlier. So if I click on the Add Family button again, okay, I now know that this is a new family, so I'm going to click Add. And now you're going to see that we have our family name that's being where our cursor is. But we do have to add a family ID. So when I click on family ID, see how it automatically numbered it to 502? That's because our setting was made for the ID number to start at 500. Now, if I want to see what all the other available IDs are, I can click on that, and it'll tell me what my next IDs are. Okay. The name. Now, anytime I start typing in a name, it's going to bring up the name breakdown box. So I'm going to start typing in last name first, and you always want to start with the last name. Here's our name breakdown. Now, I'm going to start typing in Watson. Now, notice when I hit my tab button, it takes me over to the gender. Now, you're going to see that they automatically add this member is checkboxed. That's just simply going to create a head record for George at the same time we build the family. That's going to aid in the the need to manually create a head and spouse records if we keep these boxes checked. So I'm going to tab over to the next field. Let's go ahead and add in the title. So he's Mr. If he has a middle name, I can type that in now. And suffix, he doesn't have a suffix. And if he has a nickname, we could put that in. Just keep tabbing to get to the next field. So you always want to get into the tab motion. Now, George is single. He doesn't have a wife, so we're going to leave that spouse information blank. But then down below, you're going to see the name breakdown along with the mailing name when we send them a mailing, a formal salutation, and an informal salutation. Now, you have control. So let's say George says he wants to, when we send a mailing to him, we want him to just be George Watson. We don't want, he doesn't like Mr. It's a little too formal. We can take that out. And now every time we send a mailing to George, it's just going to say, Dear George Watson, not Mr. Or we can change any part of that name, right? So just because it auto-calculates for us doesn't mean that that's what we're stuck with when we're contacting these individuals or these families. Now, if we make a mistake or we just need to set that back, we can hit that recalculate button and get us right back to where we were. And then down below, information for checking duplicates. Leave all fields blank to choose from all families. All right, so the program's going to check for a George Watson when we click Apply OK. Right? Now, if it found a record that looked very similar, then it would prompt us, hey, this family looks like it's in the system already. You'll just want to compare the two records at that point to make sure you're not adding duplicates. But it's going to go ahead and quickly do that for us. Now, we put in the rest of the information. So if we have a registered date, we can go ahead and plug that in. Notice that we have calendar right here on the right. If I click on that, today's date will be highlighted. I could just click apply to bring in today's date. And then I want to get into the process or the practice of just pressing the tab button to get to my next fields. Now, family status is a keyworded field in PBS, meaning as a parish, you have control over what status means. So in my example, my family is an individual, okay? Your status list might look much different. So choose the proper status. If you're not using status, then you can leave that blank. It's not a required field. So you keep hitting the tab button until you get to the street address. Now from here, go ahead and plug in the street address. Okay, like that. Let's put in a valid zip code here. 850. Okay. All right, so at this point here, we've got the name, we've got the address. I can click save, or I can continue on. But at this point here, the family's added. There's a lot of detail about the family I might also choose to add from my registration. On the top, we have some fields called inactive. We saw that earlier. Envelope user. Now that's helpful if you are in the practice of building an envelope file and you are choosing to find all your families who have the envelope user checkbox. You can use that as search criteria. Synchronize with Dio. Now that field right there, let's talk about that here just for a moment. Any new families that are added into PDS by default should have that box checked. Okay? Now where that comes into play is on our setup screen. So I'm going to go to setup here real quick under initial setup. I'm going to go ahead and just log that. So there's two things that I want to talk about here under initial setup, and then we'll wrap it up for today. Under program options, you have your synchronize with the diocese true. Now, if you checkbox that, then that's going to automatically act as a filter to identify families that have been added so that the diocese is aware of those. Now, the diocese is probably casting a wider net to capture your active and inactive families regardless of this checkbox, but it doesn't hurt to check that box anyways. And then your default envelope user to true, you have that option as well. So every family is an envelope user. You can choose that. And then also ask for reasons on significant changes. Now, you might have noticed a couple of times when I edited the family, there was a box that popped up that put in why I'm editing that record. That's due to this field here called ask for reasons on changes. That becomes really helpful for when, especially if you have a number of folks that are using Church Office or Formation Office, and you need to better understand why a record was changed and for what reason that record was changed. You can use that, reasons for significant changes, to help you identify that. All right, so I'm gonna just click Save OK and close. But for the George Watson family, I can now pull him up. So if I go back to my family record, since he was the last family I was on, it's going to automatically come up. And then we're going to be able to continue to work with him. Okay? But for the most part, he's an active record in our database now. And if I go to my search field, you'll see he's the one up on top because he's the last record I searched for and that I worked with. This recent search list is also helpful for when you're working with a set of families and going back and forth to those families. Instead of having to put in their name to do the lookup, you're probably going to see them in your drop-down list. So go ahead and just choose them from here. Let's go to Stephen Wood. Oh, so remember we have that filter on that inactive filter. It's just saying that it's been turned off. So let's see, filler. Okay, so to get to him, we turned off the filter because we're saying we want to get to Stephen Wood. So just remember, if that happens, just switch your filter back on. All right. So I want to thank everybody for joining me today. A lot of information to cover in 1 hour, but hopefully you all found some information, some useful bits and pieces of what we talked about today that you can take back to your program. I'm going to also check to see if there was any questions that came in, review those, and make sure that any questions that came in that were not answered, that we get answers to all of those. All right. Christy, did you have any final words before we wrap up?
Just a thank you to you, Mike, for your time and for everyone here. And just a reminder, we'll be back next week at 1:30, and it will be a different link. I'll send that to you Tuesday morning.
All right. And we did not get a chance to do the online registration, so we're gonna also talk about that in one of our future sessions. I'll see if it'll fit into next time, or it might fit in one of the other sessions. But we have 4 more to go. So again, thank you everybody for your time today, and looking forward to our next session. Have a great rest of your day.